What's going on, guys? My name's Kyle, and today's video is going to be about what private labeling is and why you need it for your Amazon FBA store. So, private labeling is basically having a private label or brand that you put on your Amazon products. Now, there's a couple reasons why you do this, but the most important by far is it prevents other people from selling on your listing. So, a lot of times, if people are outsourcing their products, which most likely you are, because you wouldn't be making it yourself usually. A lot of people have the opportunity to buy from that same supplier, right? So theoretically, they can buy from the exact same supplier, and then they could just start selling on your listing on Amazon. It's called like a hijacker, and a lot of times you've probably seen online people having a lot of issues with hijackers. Because they hijack the listing, and basically what they'll do is they'll set their price lower so that anyone that goes to your listing, they can start like getting those sales essentially, and it's less work for them because all they have to do is post on your listing versus make their own listing, and then your listing's already, let's say it's ranked well, and so they see that as an easy opportunity to not have to rank their own listing. They can just sell on yours, and so if you're thinking about doing that, don't. It's not a good long-term plan. But for the short term, some people are it's kind of a scummy thing to do, because you're essentially using all the hard work someone else has done, to, make a quick buck. But, a lot of times people do this, not necessarily illegally unless you have, certain patents or trademarks in place. But, you're not allowed to if it's not the exact same product, according to Amazon's terms of service. So, an easy way to avoid the legal side of that, obviously you can file for trademarks and stuff like that for your specific like branding and stuff like that, but you have to have your brand on the product, okay? And if you have the brand on the product, either one of two things will happen. One, they don't have your brand on their product, and so they're not selling the same thing, so you can kick them off your listing that way. Or if they do have the brand on their product, then that means that they're not an authorized reseller of your product because you obviously didn't give them permission to be selling that. So either way, those are ways that you can kick them off of your listing. So that's why it's really important to have your private label or just your brand name on your product that you're selling. Now, you can do it a variety of ways. By far the easiest way is having it on the packaging, because packaging is really easy to customize for suppliers in China. So what you could do is, let's say on the box you have your brand name very prominently shown, and then on the listing you have that box on the listing somewhere as one of your pictures, just so it's evident that it's there. That way people can't sell it, even if the product is like unlabeled and it's just a very generic looking product. If the box has it, that's one way that you can kind of show that it is a brand and that other people cannot sell it because it's your brand specifically that you made. Now, you can also, a better way to go about it is just having it directly on the product, but that's not really a viable option sometimes, especially if it's a smaller product. Let's say you're selling, this is a bad idea, don't sell watches, but if you're selling watches, it's hard to, get your brand on the watch itself sometimes, because, it might like clutter it up the look, or especially if it's something that people are looking at a lot that's not necessarily for utility, but it's more of a fashion item. Sometimes people don't want brands really prominently shown, but other times people really like the brand, so it can go either way, but it depends whatever your product is. So that's a huge reason why you would want the brand or your private label on your product, is to prevent those hijackers. And then the second reason is that having a private label product demands a higher value for that product. Okay, so what I mean by that is that if you're buying a brand name item versus a generic item, you're always going to pay more for the brand name. Okay, so that's really with anything. You can even go into the supermarket and food that has like the high-end brand name, it could be the exact same thing. Like canned green beans, for example, you can buy, the generic version from like your local supermarket, or you can buy, I forgot what the name is, but there's like some, brand name green beans, and they're going for like 30% higher of a cost. I guarantee that they're the exact same thing at the end of the day. They're both green beans, right? But because it has that brand name, and there's sometimes that recognition, but a lot of times it's just because it's the brand name, you can charge more. And you can see that in all different products, food, cars, t-shirts. Well, cars aren't really unbranded, but t-shirts is a good example. And so I'll show you guys that right now. You can look at these t-shirts and you can see, okay, if you go into like some of these brands are like non-brands almost, and they're going for really cheap. So if you go like these main t-shirts right here, Hanes can like demand a higher sale price versus some of the other non like branded t-shirts. So like Hanes and Gillidan, bigger type brands, they can demand that higher cost versus if you go into like a local store and just buy an unbranded shirt, they're probably going for like $5, whereas some of these are going for like $20. And so obviously they're bigger brands, so they can demand even higher. But the fact of the matter is that you can just have your brand. People don't have to necessarily know your brand like on the back of their head, but they realize that, or on the top of their head, but they realize that it is a brand, and that adds more value to your product. Okay, so if you have that brand name, you can demand a higher price for your product. It sets you apart from generic looking brands, or generic looking just products. They're not brands. And then you prevent those hijackers from taking over your listing. And so there's just only pluses really. The only negative is that some manufacturers will charge you for adding your brand or private label to the product. But I actually have been lucky and haven't had any costs for any of my products to add the label. Sometimes getting it on the actual product can be difficult, but the box usually is free. So definitely ask and do that, just so you don't have any issues down the line, because that would be the worst if you have a really successful listing, you have a ton of products in, but you didn't like properly private label your product, and then you end up losing a bunch of business because someone comes in and buys the same exact generic product, and you can't prove that it's not yours. It could be slightly different, but you can't really prove it unless it's properly labeled on your end. And if it's not, it can be really difficult to get them off your listing, and it can cost you a ton of money. Hope that video helps you guys out, and make sure you private label your products. If you like this, like and subscribe for more content similar to this about Amazon FBA and just like advertising and everything to do with online. And I'll see you guys in the next video.